Saludos, buenos tardes a todos. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. As we build an audience, if anyone has already joined us, I'd love to invite you to share out our live stream so that we can build an audience in the first few minutes of our show. To introduce myself, my name is Karena Acree-Páez, and I'm a member of the Anticonquista Collective. And today we are so thrilled to have a really, really amazing guest that we've been so excited to feature for you all. Her name is Zahira Kelly-Cabrera, and many of you are familiar with her music. She is a noted speaker, and I will read a little bit from her bio here. If you bear with me one moment. Okay. Zahira Kelly-Cabrera, aka Bad Dominicana, is an Afro-Dominicana mommy, writer, DJ, singer-songwriter, artist, mujerista, award-winning sociocultural critic, and international speaker. Known for nearly a decade of advocating for Afro-Latina visibility and rights on social media and unfiltered social critique in an accessible language. Zahira has been featured in a number of publications, such as the New York Times, Latina, Complex, The Fader, Vibe, Cosmopolitan, Time, BBC, and many other publications and media outlets for her sociocultural analysis and art. Also, the international trending hashtags of hashtag maybe he doesn't hit you and its Spanish language version quizás no te pegue on how gendered non-physical abuse manifests in daily life were also authored by her. This, in fact, led to her TEDx talk in Mexico City on the subject. So, hermana Zahira, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. We are so honored to have you.
Gracias a ustedes por la invitación.
Okay. To start us, so hermana, I think one of the your areas of expertise in being able to articulate very complex concepts about the colonized conception of the universe, which doesn't include Afro-Latinas, and you have a lot of experience in retelling this history of 1942 to present day from an Afro-Latina feminist perspective, because you're able to offer a very nuanced breakdown of Latin American racial, gender, and class hierarchy, and how they're historically manifested in Latin American political and social conscious, especially in reggaeton music, which we are going to talk about today. So, hermana, to start us off, would you be willing to tell us a bit about yourself and share what you'd like with us regarding where and how you grew up and how you became an artist?
Well, thanks again first. As for me, I am a single mom, Dominican American. I grew up between the Bronx and Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. Puerto Plata is where I live now. I came back. I grew up in the hood. I grew up going back and forth between a barrio in the Dominican Republic without running water and electricity. And the hood in the Bronx, that was luxury, if you ask Dominicans, right? But it was like dodging gunshots, and it was the crack era,
Right, okay.
There was crack everywhere. There were literally drive-bys, police tape on the sidewalks, chalk line bodies we were stepping over all the time. That was basically my upbringing. I was always an artist, basically, since I could hold a pencil. My mom taught. My mother is an artist, so she got me into that pretty early. And I always focused on drawing Black and brown girls. And that was sort of opposed to my schooling. And I say schooling because if they only teach you how to draw white people, is that schooling? I don't know.
Yeah.
And kind of bumping heads, like say when I would draw a woman with a lot of hips, they would say that's not realistic, and then I would be like, well, my grandmother looks like that, so
Yeah.
what do you mean it's not realistic? And
Yeah.
it's just like I didn't really understand that I was pushing back. You know, I
Yeah.
was like in junior high at the time.
Yeah.
And I grew up like most Latin Americans, like most Americans, which is they don't give us any education about like how race happens in Latin America or about any of that stuff. So I grew up knowing as much as everybody else about myself, which is
Mhm.
nothing, you know, and that's like really dismal because I went to school in both the Dominican Republic and the US, and neither told me anything about myself. And like
Interesting. Yeah.
that tells you already like what it's like. You know, in DR they'll give you men's history, the history of the revolutionary men.
Right.
They'll sprinkle in a couple of women who are tend to be not black, even though it's a majority black woman country. Um,
Right.
so really, eventually in my early 20s, I just kind of like hit a wall. Where I realized I don't even know what the hair texture that grows out of my head is because I've been taught to fear it because I'm a black person and like we're supposed to look a certain way, and that way is always the closer to whiter is the better. And like that was like sort of where I began like my journey of figuring all of this stuff out and studying for myself all of the things that they were not going to teach me at school, you know.
Mhm.
And it became like me venting on the internet, like blogging, not thinking that anybody was gonna care. And eventually I got like this huge following, and girls at university started booking me to go talk at their schools because I was covering all of these things that they're going through, that
Mhm.
they're thinking, that they're
Yeah.
facing, that they did not have the words for either. Because it's just like when we
Yeah.
think about the women's issues, it tends to center on white women. In
Mhm.
Latin America, when we think about women's issues, it centers non-black Latinas, you know?
Mhm.
So it's just like when they're talking about black women, they're not talking about black Latinas. When they're talking about Latinas, they're not talking about me either.
Right.
You know,
Right.
obviously white women are not checking for me. So it was just like I had to find and articulate my own lane just to survive and keep myself sane. Like I'm
Mhm.
very grateful for the support and what that became eventually, but really up until now, that's been me trying to cope with my place in the world because it's a place that nobody explains to you whatsoever. You know?
Right. And I think, I mean, one of the reasons, if I may interrupt for a moment, one of the reasons that I really admire you so much is that, like you said, you had the courage to kind of carve these lanes that you didn't see. I mean, you forged these lanes that were not available. And when you had the courage to do that, that's when you're able to find or connect with so many other women that had similar experiences. Like, I think we're hearing somebody type. Sorry. So, for example, also you do the same thing with the hashtag quizás no te pega, that was a way that, you carved a lane again for so many people, and you've done the same thing in being able to so effectively articulate. And, by bringing this kind of articulation to the forefront as you've done, it's like, we have to be able to articulate the injury, So if we're not able to articulate the injury and, find language and courage to put those two together, we're unable to, you know, um, uh, effectively identify what are the root causes of this. And maybe we can get into one of the reasons why, like you are able to, one of the things I've seen you do before we start talking about racism and reggaeton, which we're going to get to in a minute, is I've seen you break down kind of the history of kind of like a history of Latin race in Latin America and anti-Blackness, I guess we could say, in Latin America. So would you be able to give us kind of an overview on that topic so that we can kind of have the background with these themes and concepts that we're going to be revisiting throughout the talk? Does that sound okay?
Yeah, yeah. So we have to contextualize everything before we talk about right race
Right,
and
right.
reggaeton, right? And that means breaking down all of the strange ideas we have in Latinidad that we're all raised with, which is like that we're a racial democracy. We don't see race. That doesn't apply here. That's only Americans doing it.
All right.
Stop bringing that gringo shit over here. We don't talk about that here. And first of all, it's a lie. It is talked about. There are Black and Indigenous activists talking about race in Latin America all of the time in their native languages and in Spanish. You know, like this is happening all of the time. That you don't know of it speaks of how the average person is not plugged into those struggles and those activist circles and like
Right.
these movements that people have been leading for literally like 600 years. You know, so first we think about Latin America as either just white colonizers mixed with indigenous people, you know? And maybe there's some black, but it's like super way in the background. It's like not even like noticeable. Blah 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 blah. We're all black. We're all so mixed. It's so beautiful, and none of us think about any of that. You know, except um or I've had people say like, oh, there wasn't any slavery in my country. There's no anti-blackness in my country, and it's just like any Latin American country that you look at had an influx of slaves that helped build your country from the ground up, still has black people who are being treated like shit and marginalized and erased from everywhere. You know, it does not matter which Latin American country it is. While we're all different and we have our own context, you know, and our own like dialects or whatever, the one thing that unites us is that we were colonized by like these European people, and they did the same thing everywhere. On my
Exactly.
island is where they started with indigenous genocide, you know, killing off Tainos. That's where indigenous struggle began in the Americas. That's also where this is also where the first slave ships came in the Americas, which is the early 1500s. Like something like 1502, there was already slave ships here, you know? Um, so we have just that already where when we think about the discovery of America, we don't think about the fact that it happened in the Latin Caribbean
Right. Yeah.
first. We don't think about the fact that it began in the Dominican Republic.
Right.
We don't think about the fact that the majority of the slaves that were brought to the Americas landed south of the border. You know,
Right.
like over 90% of slaves that came to the Americas went to Central and South America and the Caribbean. You know, it wasn't North America. So um, it was Latin America where the racial hierarchy began, you know, with white at the top and then near white. And then at the bottom, you find
Right.
indigenous and black people.
The
You know what I'm
castas.
saying? Like, we invented that. Well, we didn't, but the colonizers
Right.
invented that in Latin America. And then the British were like, I want in, and then went and tried it in North America. So when we talk about that's like gringo stuff and we don't do that here, it's like, no, we did that first. The gringos copied
Right.
us, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And those are things that we do not like to accept. Anytime you talk about race in Latin America, we say that that doesn't occur. But then you turn on the TV, you turn on Univision, you turn on Telemundo, you turn on Galavisión, whatever Latin American channel or media, and you're only going to find white Latinos or like lighter skin mestizos, because it's never the mestizos who look more indigenous either, unless they're playing like, you know, the worker in the hacienda.
Yeah. A role, a
You
very
know
a
what I'm saying?
caricature
So there's
role.
a hierarchy of mestizos too,
Right.
basically. We see in the novelas where the light skinned mestiza can be transformed and fit into the whiteness or whatever, because at least she's close enough. But the browner mestizos, they're gonna stay in the hacienda working in the background for her, you know, type thing. And you're not gonna see any black people whatsoever unless they're like maybe a maid in the background, if that, because that's rare. Unless it's a slavery novela, in which case suddenly they found every black actor in the universe. You know what
Yes,
I'm
I've
saying?
seen
Oh,
that
so
from
you know
the
there's a black
Brazilian
person
one.
every
Yeah,
right.
the Brazilian novelas. Yeah, they do that.
Yeah, and the only way that we exist somehow is in slavery, because they like to think of blackness as in the past, you know.
Right.
So we have
Right.
all these elements in Latin American culture that, of course, yeah, it is a mix of a lot of things, but it's not actually that European. It's a mix of a lot of indigenous and black things, I don't know why Latin Americans stick so much to the European part, because no European goes to Latin America and be like, this is just like Europe.
No,
No,
right, no, right,
no, they
right.
do not. We
Yeah,
do not have that close of proximity beyond language. Yeah, a puro coñazo, because we don't speak Spanish like they do either.
right,
Do you
right,
know what I'm saying? Like, we don't
right.
speak
That's
Spanish like
another.
them.
Yeah, I love that point you made
And
about.
Brazilians don't speak Portuguese like the Portuguese either. You know, like
Right.
we've all created our own dialects. Um, so in comes the issue of like race in reggaeton or race in anywhere. Because what we
Hmm.
see in reggaeton is the same thing that we've seen in all of the music genres. Samba was at one point forbidden until white people started doing it. You know, it was considered too vulgar. Tango, you don't think you think of two white people gliding across the dance floor now, but that
Hmm.
was black people in black clubs in Argentina, and it was also prohibited because it was considered indecent. Um, Punta, cumbia is very black. Vallenato is very black. You know, I think that what gets me about that even is the cumbia. So many Latin Americans have taken that on, not understanding that it is a black genre.
Hmm.
You know, I saw this little clip of Selena in like 91 or 92, and she explains cumbia as an Afro-Colombian genre of music. And I'm like, Selena in 1992 called this black Colombian music very fucking clearly. And y'all
Yeah.
are in 2022 now arguing that it does not come from anywhere and that somehow everybody is right. And that is the error that happens with Latin Americans, is that mestizaje is like basically a plague, that theory where
Hmm.
supposedly you're supposed to mix away the brownness, you're supposed to
Right.
mix away the blackness, and the point is always arreglar la raza, to fix the race
Hmm.
with somebody whiter so that your family can get higher up in the echelon and do better, because that's literally how it works. While
Hmm.
we say that we don't see race, we still worship all of the blue and green eyes. We still worship the noses that don't look too black or indigenous. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? The hair has to be straight and like white people's, preferably blonde, honestly. You got to be light skinned. You have to be built like a Nordic supermodel, which is super tall, skinny. You know what I'm saying? It's not it doesn't correlate with what indigenous people look like.
Right.
It doesn't correlate with
Exactly.
what black people look like. You
Yeah.
know, there's also Asian people in Latin America. We rarely ever see them. There's a bunch of people from the Middle East in Latin America. Everything is very mestizo focused, but specifically
Hmm.
light skinned mestizos. And I say this not as an indictment on anybody, because I'm a lighter skinned black girl, and that means that I get privileges that darker skinned black girls are not going to get,
Hmm.
because it's levels to all
Right.
of
Right.
this
Right.
shit. I cannot sit here and pretend that I have the same experiences as a darker skinned black girl. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know why people have these issues. People also have issues admitting that there's white Latinos, there's black Latinos, there's white Latinos, and maybe they are mixed, but so are the black people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the time, like nobody gives a damn if I'm part European. Trust me, they really don't. They're not asking me. They're not like, putting me in the European pile
Yeah.
over that shit.
Right.
It's like people overvalue again that whiteness.
Hmm.
And it comes through in everything. Salsa was once a black genre as well, and
Hmm.
now everyone that we see in it is like white men, pretty much,
Yeah.
and maybe one or two women, like maybe La India, maybe Celia Cruz, and Celia died how many years ago? There's never been a successor. You don't see black people fronting salsa anymore, even though that was its beginnings. And basically, that is what's happened with reggaeton. Like it began with black people, and now all of the faces are white. And I have
Hmm.
people who were already in my DMs arguing that like Karol G is not white Latina or something, but it's like we're not even talking about technicalities, because we can bet that most people are mixed in Latin America. But what is it that you look like, and what is it that people treat you like? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Um,
Right.
they're like, no, Nati Natacha is a better example of a white Latina. Meanwhile, I have people telling me that she's a black woman. Latin
Oh
Americans
yeah.
are so incredibly confused. They'll be in my mentions telling me that Osuna is not a black man, but that J Balvin is. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but it's like mass delusion.
Yeah.
Mensaje
Yeah.
is like mental rot, and it's like mass delusion, mass gaslighting.
It's
You know what I'm saying?
self-deception too. I hear one of the themes I'm hearing in your analysis that will probably extend to the racism and reggaeton discussion is that the theme that I'm hearing in your explanation is there is a not only the stealing of Black culture production, but then there's the commodification of it into a white-driven media platforms that get to determine who profits from these things. And I guess that's going to lead us into our talk about racism and reggaeton. Hermana, one of the, I think we lost Zahira for a moment. We'll see if we can get her back. One of the things that Zahira was mentioning in her discussion, Zahira, hermana, gracias. Sorry about that. And so this kind of leads us into the discussion of racism and reggaeton. And I think one of the critical things to understand before we dive into that even is, hermana, could you give us a little bit about the history of reggaeton? Because that's going to be something, that's going to be a point that people are even disputing now and after the awards. Could you give us some history of it?
First of all, I'm still confused as to how anybody could argue that J Balvin is Afro Latino. That's a white man, Your Honor. If he was from England, you wouldn't be saying such a thing. He's whiter than a lot of white people. Okay. Um, Second, the origins of reggaeton is reggae en español, which was begun by Black Panamanians who came from the West Indies, from Jamaica and other Caribbean islands, to work on the Panama Canal, and were marginalized and ostracized. A lot of them didn't. A lot of them spoke with an accent, or they lived in like the poorer areas. Basically, like they created music to represent their context, and that was a form of like resistance, basically. It started with like Nando Boom, El General, La Sista. There's like a few who became bigger known, and from there it's like it hopped over to Puerto Rico, where it was kind of like remixed into like reggaeton as we know it now. And even in Puerto Rico, a lot of the people that initially were doing it were also Black, and you don't necessarily see them anymore at the time, at the moment. It was a lot of Teos, it was a lot of Don Omar, Zion and Lennox. Um, and they've sort of gone to the background. They've also been kind of like replaced for like the more preferable whiter Puerto Ricans. From there, obviously, it went to other countries, mainly Colombia. Um, Even though people from everywhere are really doing it at this point. And there we saw sort of a transformation where it became sort of more pop, where the industry and the media started saying like, oh, thank God they cleaned it up. Like they cleaned up the language, they cleaned up the concepts. Really what they did was whitewash it further, because it's undergone several rounds of whitewashing, basically. And Boricuas can tell, even if they don't acknowledge the fact that they took that from Panamanians, there has been sort of like tension because like they've been saying stuff like siempre calle nunca Maluma, you know. because they understand that their version of that does come from the streets. It comes from a different context, whereas it's coming like from a whiter pop, more upper class, fresita kind of like, context, like in Colombia and stuff like that. So we've just like undergone like a process of that. And now the ones winning the awards for bridging the gap between Africa and Latin America are people like J Balvin. You know, it's not even a Puerto Rican. It's not a Black Latin American whatsoever. It's one of the people who basically cleaned it up,
Right.
supposedly. So many people were relieved. I remember people on Univision talking about like, oh, thank God it's been fixed. It's more romantic now. They don't use such language. They're like whatever, but it's like it was divested from like its roots and what it was basically. Like that was the essence of it. It is still the essence of it. Really, there's people that are still doing that, but that's what's occurred. And it's a difficult situation because everybody wants to use the 3% Black blood that they have to be like, well, this is all mine. Well, that's not even Black because it's everyone's or whatever.
Yeah.
And my question is always, if it's everyone's, then why is there not a single Black girl in the position of a Karol G or a Nati Natacha or a Nati Peluso or a whoever? You don't see a single Black girl at that level ever, ever, ever. Right. So are we really sharing? Do we not see color? I've heard arguments of supposedly, well, the white girls are the most talented. How are you gonna tell me that white women in Latin America are the most talented at a Black genre? Like y'all are getting braids. You're trying to work like a Black girl. You're trying to dress and speak like a Black Caribbean Latina or whatever. But you're telling me that the actual Black Latinas are not good enough. And like we're seeing that dynamic now with this relationship of Anuel and Jailin. Jailin is being dragged through the mud for being like a Black girl from a barrio. But it's just like all of these white women in reggaeton are literally trying to look like a Black girl from the barrio.
Right.
So it's okay on them. But if you're actually that, you're non grata, like you do not belong here. We don't want you anywhere near your own music, your own genre. We don't want you in it. We want people pretending to be you, but we don't want you.
Right.
Basically, is the message. And that's Jailin, who's like a super light-skinned Black girl. Imagine if she was actually darker skinned. It's like it basically tells you everything about why you don't see us.
Right.
There's like this deep hatred of like wanting to be us, but not wanting us to be nowhere near that. And like anti-Black misogyny, intersectionality, the way that it works is like they'll accept some men, like say Sage or Osuna, and stuff like that. But when it comes to Black women, I'm sorry, that's just too much. Your Black panel woman, no. Like they at least have
Can you sing in Spanish? Yeah.
To go by. I've been told that I need to stick to singing in English because it's just not right for a Black girl to sing in Spanish. And it's just like, we was probably speaking Spanish before any of y'all because we was colonized first. You know what I mean? Exactly. But all right then, you can keep the Spanish, but yeah, it's very intentional, basically. It's not accidental that in reggaeton you only see white people now, that on Univision and all the Latin channels you only see white people. That in all the media that Latinos create, you only see light-skinned, non-Black Latinos. None of that is a coincidence. It's all a legacy of colonialism.
Right. Can we actually let's look at the if we can look at the article that you commented on that kind of like that we noticed. We really liked your commentary on it and kind of got us the idea of trying to invite you for this important conversation. So after I'll read a bit from that article so we can give everybody some context here. So again, this is from an article that was featured in a public or an article in the Takeaway, and we really loved your comments. And so by way of background, so in December of 2021, musical artist J Balvin accepted the African Entertainment Award. So I'll repeat that. The African Entertainment Award for Afro-Latino Artist of the Year. And so that, as Zahira mentioned, that sparked a backlash because he's a white Colombian. And he also, like, the way he handled it was like a double insult, because he said on Instagram, he wrote, he acknowledged that, and he said, "I'm not Afro-Latino, but thank you for giving me a place in the contribution of the Afro beat music and movement." And so to me, that smacks of very like extractive, very like, opportunistic, because he's basically saying, I mean, he's made millions of dollars from his music. And one of his videos called Perra features Black women in chains on their knees. So, and judging from his Instagram fake apology, which was basically like, "I'm sorry if you felt offended," type of thing, like the non-apology. So his arrogance came out even in that Instagram post. And he's basically saying, yes, I made millions of dollars from Black cultural production. And yes, I made millions of dollars off of Black women. I'm not Black, but thanks for the award. And then kind of brushing his hands of it. And, so one of the things that you said in that article that, then he also said, "I'm sorry if anyone felt offended." This is about the music video called Perra. And he said, "I'm sorry for anyone who felt offended, especially the Black community. That's not who I am. I'm about tolerance, love, and inclusivity." So again, we have this extreme sense of entitlement. What I see from him is an affirmation that he has somehow an inherent right to access this, capitalize on it, and make himself a millionaire while saying, "I'm not Black, but thank you for the award. Now moving on," as if it's he doesn't have to have any accountability. Even that's what his fake apology was expressing. So let me briefly read your quote from the article, if I may. You said, "It's just a huge failure to even acknowledge the enormous amount of Black descended people who live in Latin America right now, because they're calling him," and that's Jay Blavin, "the bridge between Africa and Latin America. And we're the ones who created that genre, the Black people in Latin America. We are the bridge. We are the descendants. Because of the way Latinidad is structured and just general anti-Blackness, even people from Africa do not comprehend that there are Black people in Latin America who actually have a way more of a claim because it is ours, the Afro-descended music as well." And so you say, "To name a white man the bridge between Africa and Latin America when there are so many Black people he's actually cosplaying is just absolutely ridiculous, so out of touch. The allyship, even intercommunally, just completely lacked there as well." So can you kind of unpack that statement for us? Because it seems so intellectually dishonest that, after receiving the award, he would kind of casually acknowledge, but then there's still the profound sense of entitlement that I see there. He's like, "I'm sorry if you were offended. That's not my problem. This is all mine to extract, reinvent, and then capitalize on, while pretending that I'm part of something that I'm not." So can you kind of unpack that a little bit for us?
I mean, first of all, J Balvin is really speaking from the point of view of the majority of Latin Americans, which is that they do see Black Latin American contributions as everyone's, and most particularly as theirs to exploit, even if they leave us in the gutter. That is the majority of Latin America in a nutshell. Second, I always joke that I'm gonna go to all the non-Black Latino parties and turn off their radios and like unplug all of their fucking speakers and everything, and just be like, make up your own genre, make up your own stuff for once in your fucking life. Because how do you like all enjoy this so much? The entire industry runs on Black music right now. That means that if it was taken away from them, they would not have anything to do. They would not know what to do with themselves. That is how dependent they are on this. That's why I always joke that, like, if you're so superior and you are like so big and bad, like, why don't you make your own genre that doesn't have anything to do with us? Like, why is everything always riding on exploiting us, but while shitting on us at the same time? Like, we're not good enough for anything, but we're good enough for you to take it and enjoy it and like have your parties, get your millions. You know what I'm saying? Like, express yourself, feel free. Even the concepts of like perreo, the way that non-black Latinas have talking about like it's their bodily freedom, and I'm just like, black girls who invented that don't have bodily freedom. We're vulgar when we do that. You guys are edgy. You guys are talented when you're able to do it badly, stiffly. You're in the music videos being stiff as hell. We're the ones
Like
who know how to do
robots.
it right. Like, no
Es el
offense, and maybe
robot que
all of the
hace.
offense, because maybe
Mhm.
people need to be offended sometimes. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's just like, um, but like again, he really reflects on the industry and Latin America at large. Like, we're having this conversation, but trust me, the majority of Latinos are not trying to hear any of that, because then that would mean having to be accountable for something.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have some accountability. We'd be like, well, I'm oppressed too. And it's just like, oppressed people are oppressors all the time. All the time. You know what I'm saying? Even intercommunally with black people, like, there be beef, you know. Black Latinos can sometimes be very anti-black to other black people.
Mhm.
And non-Latino black people are often like very like dismissive of the fact that black Latinos even exist, which is how that award even happened.
Mhm.
You know, so it's just like,
Yeah.
honestly, nobody's hands are clean.
Right.
Accountability is what everybody runs from. So J Balvin not being accountable and just like being like, oh well, I'm still gonna make my money. It's like, that's
Mhm.
how Latin America runs. That is what it's been running on since 1492. It's the legacy of slavery to do that.
Right.
Honestly.
Right. Exactly. 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 Um, so I have a question from one of my comrades. Shout out to Richard, if you are watching, Richard from Anticonquista. And he wanted me to ask a question from you about um, kind of maybe this beef that's happening between Jamaican um, uh, artists, and kind of the controversy is that a world-renowned Jamaican dancehall artist Buju Banton said Panamanians and other Latin Americans stole reggaeton from um, from Jamaica. Do you have any? And he said now the reggaeton is now capitalizing on what was stolen from Jamaica. So, do you have any opinion on
Well,
that?
yeah, we addressed that. Like, in one sense, Buju is completely correct. Latin Americans have stolen all of that. Because really the people who are big and who he's referring to are all of the white Latinos, and who be talking about how that's not black music and that it's a mixture of so many things, but they're using literal dance hall beats for everything. We have people
Right.
like Ruko, whose entire shtick is being a pretend Jamaican. Like, it's super bizarre. Um, Really, that's also, and in another sense, it's like not acknowledging the fact that the Panamanians who began reggaeton are Jamaican. They are of
Mhm.
Jamaican descent, literally, quite
Oh yeah.
literally. So, I mean, reggaeton quite literally was created, like reggae en español was created by Jamaican people who ended up speaking Spanish because they ended up in Panama, you know?
Mm.
So, I mean, yes, he is correct. It has been stolen from Jamaicans. He's just not necessarily acknowledging that those Jamaicans are also Panamanian. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I mean, that really blew over pretty quickly because I feel that everybody knew exactly what he was alluding at. And it's like, we're in agreement. It has been stolen. You guys
Yeah.
are doing straight up black music, black aesthetics, black dancing, black everything with all black people. That's bizarre. And it's not like you
Yeah.
can't find them in your country. It's not like you're isolated. You're getting the
Yeah.
music from us. Like they're doing culture tours here in the Dominican Republic. Like all of these white Latino artists who do reggaeton, they do culture tours here. They come and pick up beats and steal them. The lyrics, they steal them. That's why they be using Dominican slang in all of their songs. We're
I
literally like
noticed that all the Puerto
so,
Rican
and that's
reggaeton.
another
Yeah.
and Puerto Rican slang. But Puerto Ricans are using Dominican slang
Or
too.
Dominican slang. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
The thing about the anti-blackness is also that Dominicans are considered to be the people who speak the worst Spanish in Latin America. We're the least educated when it comes to how we talk because we don't know how to talk. We speak black vernacular Spanish. We speak the blackest out of everybody in Latin America. So like this purism, nobody has a leg to stand on with that. You don't talk like Spaniards. Spaniards don't want you. You know, they're not checking for you. I don't know why you are defending that so bad. And second, even with the language, the anti-blackness is the same because they'll shit all over us for speaking like that in our daily life. But to sound street and to sound cool, they're using all of our slang in
Right.
music when they do not talk that way. So it's cool for you to profit off of it, but it's not cool for us to be us, to be that, because that's us for real. The same with
Right.
thing with Jailene is like it's not cool for her to be a black barrio girl, but it's cool for them to pretend to be that for profit and to look cool and feel edgy, right?
Right.
It's the
Can you?
same exact dynamics.
Mhm. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say. I think you've mentioned before that you had an exchange with um, with somebody from Calle 13. Was it you had an exchange with him where he said something about, I mean, this goes back to the theme of like uh stealing black music and then regurgitating it and making it, more appealable to to a white audience, basically. Let's be honest. Stealing black music and making it more palatable to a white audience, for purposes of like wealth generation, right? So can you tell us about what exchange you had with Calle 13 and how that is a reflection of this thing? Broader
Yeah.
topic, I mean.
Now, I definitely want to begin by saying that I too was, I don't know, fooled by the veneer of Calle 13 that was seemed very progressive, forward thinking or something. And then I realized, like, hold on. This guy, first of all, his background is that he's from a gated upper middle class community. You know what I'm saying? This is a little blanquito, a little fresita dude who decided that he wanted to cosplay as street, right? So that's the background. Now he was on Twitter complaining about how he doesn't get respect in hip hop, yada yada, while at the same time putting down Black Americans who invented hip hop as like supposedly privileged and talking about like he had it worse in his upper middle class gated community than they do in the hood.
Ah, wow.
So you do hip hop and you're talking about respect for hip hop that you do, but you don't respect the conditions that created the hip hop.
Right.
And it was
Yeah.
basically, I'm from the Bronx where hip hop was created. It was gunshots, it was death, it was crack, it was police violence, it was all the buildings being burned down either because of negligence from landlords or it's because they didn't care who died in there because they wanted to like spruce them up and make them more expensive for somebody else type stuff. Like it was basically, and it still is the conditions in the hood. Because the thing is, even if you're a Latin American person who lives in the U.S. in the hood, you know that shit is not cute. It's not
Right.
privileged. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you're not acknowledging the history and the roots of hip hop and why it is what it is, basically.
Mhm.
But you want respect for you. And then he started talking about, oh, that black people are racist against him. And he gives an example, and it's that he has a penthouse in a multi-million-dollar building in the Manhattan, right? And the security guard is black and didn't let him in because he didn't know that he lived there. And this is your example, but that man, that black man is a security guard, and you're the one that lives in the penthouse as a white man. And you're talking about he discriminated because you were dressed like urban, because you were dressed black, baby. You was dressed like a black person, sweetie. You was wearing the pants and the stuff and the aesthetic that you took from black people. This is what you call racism.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I like called him out on that, and he came into my DMs talking about what is my problem with him.
Wow.
Right? And I have it. I have all of the screenshots for posterity. But it's like, I'm like, do you not understand your position as a white Puerto Rican? He's like, black people in the US still have more privilege than me. I'm oppressed. The United States people don't let me be in their industry. They think that this is only summer music. And I'm just like, but you're one of the richest, most famous in the Latin American context. Do you think a black woman could ever be in your position? He's like, well, that doesn't matter because I am not in white men's position. And I'm just like, you are in a white man's position.
Yes, you are. Right.
I'm like, there's black people everywhere. There's black women everywhere. You're going to tell me that, like, you are in the same position, that we have the same opportunities? He's like, I don't have to think about that. I'm like, do you think that black Mexican women have the same opportunities as a Salma Hayek? He's like, but she still goes through stuff. And it's like, that's the thing. You being oppressed does not take away your privilege or the fact that you can be an oppressor too. Like, then he went on to tell me, when I was like, even Argentina, which is the whitest country, still has black people. And he's like, no, the black people in Argentina aren't from there. They're all immigrants. First of all, that's a lie. Second, in Argentina, all those white Argentinians that you just call Argentinian, plain and simple, they're German, they're Italian, they're Polish.
Spaniards.
Call them out as not being Argentinian or not being Latino because they came from those places. But if a black person came from somewhere else, they're never going to belong.
Right. They'll never be Argentinian. Right.
And then at the time, I had in these like locks, like blue locks, you know, like in my hair. And he's like, is that hair even yours? And I'm just like, you are a white man who has never dealt with the issues that a black girl does. Burning holes through my scalp with fucking chemicals. We got kicked out of school and out of jobs for wearing our hair the way that it grows naturally. You never have to deal with any of that shit. And you're also coming for my hair. So this is just to say your heroes are also anti-black, and they're also exploitative. They're also appropriating. And they have no respect or care in the world for anything that happens to black women or black people in general, basically. Like, that's what I learned with that. It's just like, at the end of the day, he talks like a white man. Like a privileged white man. There is no getting through the bad dude. And that is Residente from Calle 13, who, when he did that Latino America song, I fucking cried. Okay? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's a veneer. It's a veneer.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Hermana. I wonder if we could take a couple questions now from maybe our viewers, if we have any. So, but everyone who's joined us on live, if you have any questions for Hermana Zahira, maybe you can put them up, and we'll see if we have a few minutes for some questions. We've got about 10 minutes left, or less than that, actually. Do we have any questions that we've gotten so far? We have our comrade. Okay. We don't have any questions right now. Maybe if we get some after we've invited. Oh, thank you. Yes, this Ocelot 1491 says, so el residente from Calle 13 is white. Sí, es muy blanquito, ojos claros. I think he has blue eyes. And he's about And he's very blanquito.
When I said that he was white, he said that a cousin's brother's wife's aunt is black. He doesn't have any black family. All of his family is white. Yes, there's white Latinos. Yes, there's white Puerto Ricans. Does that make you less Puerto Rican or Latino? Not really, but it does mean you're privileged.
Right, exactly. That's the point. Yeah.
And people be like, well, I'm poor too. And it's like, there's white Americans who are poor and living in the trailer park as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's still white
Exactly.
people. And if
Right.
you're poor and you're of color or from Latin America, you're not going to be treated as good as them because they're still white. Even if they're from a trailer
Exactly.
park. It's the same dynamic. It's levels. It's the same
Exactly.
thing, people.
We have another question from Bray O. He said, I'm late to the live. What are some good reggaeton artists I should listen to?
Good reggaeton artists you should listen to. I'm assuming they mean like black people.
Let's do that. Yeah.
I really love Sage.
Sage, okay.
But where you're going to, I really love Choking Town. But where you're going to find the majority of black people in urban music is in the Dominican genre, in Dembow, where we're like majority black. We're all black pretty much in that genre. It's the only popular genre that is all black still, which is huge. So, Rochi RD, Bullying 47, Gailen La Molleta.
Okay.
There's a bunch of people.
Okay, thank you, Hermana. Another question in from Teo Hernandez. He says, Zahira, how do we support you? What are your fave upcoming artists? I think you addressed that. Maybe so. How can we? This is kind of a closing question, I guess, because we've got just a few minutes left. What are some ways that we can follow your work? Or I think you have a single out, right? If you could tell us some ways that we can follow your work and what you've got percolating.
You can follow me on social media, Bad_Dominicana. IG, it's Bad_Dominicana 2.0. I'm not for the weak though, you know. If you're gonna be in your feelings about somebody saying that you're white, don't be. I'm black. Life is life. That doesn't mean you're not mixed. So am I. I'm still black. It's just like, it's not for the weak. It's not for the people who are going to be crying reverse racism, which doesn't exist either, because I cannot affect your life and your position. Right. But even though y'all can affect mine, y'all can exclude me from places because I'm black. I can't exclude you from nothing. It's not the same. So you can definitely support me in that. You can also share my information, book me for workshops or for talks and lectures. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/bad_Dominicana. But yeah.
Thank you, Hermana. One of the things I've heard you say that kind of made me stop in my tracks and have a read that again moment was in one of your interviews. I remember you said that I think someone asked essentially the question, what does our collective, if we can imagine, what can our community do to make sure that we are exposing this, because we all have familiares, we all have, primas, tias, tios, that we have heard the expression of anti-Blackness within our own families. And, we may have become complacent in letting those things slide because we've grown up with it as part of, vernacular, and we haven't effectively questioned it, and we haven't done enough to call people out. And so I was saying, one of the things that you said that made me kind of stop in my tracks is, if I'll paraphrase and you can correct me, you said something like Latinos, or maybe white Latinos, or white Latinos should think about what they say, the racism that they experience basically is what is what Afro-Latinas feel is inflicted on them by that subset of people. So it's like, if we have to think we're doing the same thing, you know, turning the mirror on ourselves, basically. And so I think that's a big push. That's something that we can do by having conversations like this. What do you think about
Absolutely.
that?
Well, it's like I was saying, it's like we all have to take accountability, all of us,
Right,
and some more than others. So,
right,
I would liken it to like this push that Latin Americans have in the US about, I want my rights even though I'm a minority. I want representation in Hollywood. I want all of these things. And it's just like, but you treat Black people in Latin America and in your own communities way worse than that.
right,
So you're asking white people for what you don't give, basically. Like there's literally thousands of Latin American channels, movies, books that only have non-Black Latinos in them.
right.
And then you want to go to the US and be like, how come white people don't give me everything that I want?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and like I'll bring it up and they'll be like, well, you're just a minority, so it doesn't matter. The majority wins. This is how Latinos talk to Black people from Latin America. And then it's just like, white people can tell you the exact same thing. Why do you matter? You're just a minority. Sit in
Yeah,
the back. Stop complaining.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like taking a look in the mirror and just like asking yourself, like, are you even giving the things that you are asking for? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
the focus is on white people validity, on having
Mhm.
white people do things for you and accept you, while you treat people like shit, like indigenous and Black people like shit in your own communities.
Mhm.
Complaining about you get stereotyped as a maid in the US, but in Latin America it's the indigenous and Black women who are stereotyped as the maid by you.
Mhm. Mhm.
you know so it's just like there's like a cycle and a process that happens where everything that white people do to you, you want to go do it to the lesser. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
you do have to examine yourself. We're not faultless. Dominicans have things to account for, even as a majority Black country, for anti-Blackness, for the way that we treat Haitian people, because it's the same thing, trying to cycle back the way that people treat us towards somebody else. You
Exactly.
know what I'm saying? And
That's
it's like we
exactly.
all have things to be accountable for, my dear.
Yeah. We have
you
to
know?
keep reinforcing that.
And if
Yeah.
you want to really talk about Latin American community and
Mhm.
brown pride or whatever, you need to actually think about the people who are literally brown.
Right.
You need to think about actual literal community with everyone, and not just who you think looks the right way. And I say this because, like, say for example, I've been in California with my ex who's Native Hawaiian, and we would go to a Mexican place, and they would speak to him in Spanish because he looks like a mestizo, right? But then to me, stink eye, una cara de perra. You know what I'm saying? I'm the one that's Latina and speaks Spanish. He don't speak a
Mhm.
lick of it. He don't even know what they're telling him. But he has the right look. So it's like, ay, mi hermano, whatever. We love you. You have the right look. You know what I'm saying? That's what I learned from that. Is that like Latinos need to
Yeah.
fucking get over that shit and understand that we come in literally all kinds of colors and shapes and sizes. It's not only you. And basically, if you're going to be real about community, then be real about community. If you're going
Mhm.
to be racist about it, admit that to yourself. You
Mhm.
know
And
what I'm
it's
saying?
like
Admit
you
it
know,
to yourself.
right. And like you said, these things like yeah, they are ugly. Yeah, they can be painful. Yes, they require, or us to look at ourselves deeply and consider, what our role is. Because you said without any accountability, none of this is conversation will be pushed forward anymore. And so I guess maybe we're running up on the hour, and I wanted to maybe read a quote that really reminded me of you in a great way. And it's by a account called at Indigenous Motherhood, but it's not really for mothers. It's just kind of a reflection. It applies to all of us, I think, and our responsibility, which is what we've kind of been talking about today. And it says, how our children respond to colonialism today is how future generations in our bloodlines will respond to colonialism. And it is all based on how our ancestors raise their children, and in turn, how we raise our children today. Carry on the legacy of raising resistance, nurture colonial disobedience. And that kind of really reminded me of your work, Hermana, and I'm so grateful again for your willingness to come and have this conversation with us. We're so honored to feature you today, and so shout out to my team at Anticonquista for helping to facilitate the live stream. Y otra vez, Hermana, we're so grateful to have you. It's been so wonderful, and please follow her, like she said, at her Instagram, Bad Dominicana. You can find her and her hashtag, Quizás no te pegue. Please check out her work in that area as well. Otra vez, gracias, hermana, y gracias a todos que están con nosotros. Thank you, hermana.
And
Okay.
I guess the only thing that I would leave y'all with is when you think decolonization, you can only focus on whites and sticking it to the white man. Understand that colonialism is also anti-blackness.
Right.
You can have it both ways, and they can fight white people, but join them in being anti-black. It's really that simple.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you so much, hermana. We're coming up on the hour, so we'll say goodbye to you for now. And saludos a todos. Gracias por estar con Anticonquista esta tarde. Adiós.